Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling confused? You know the feeling when someone says one thing, but something in their tone, their body language, or their eyes tells you there's more beneath the surface. You wonder, did they really mean what they said? Or was there an underlying message you missed? It's frustrating, isn't it? In a world where trust seems harder to find, and relationships often come with hidden motives, truly understanding others has become one of the most valuable skills we can develop, especially as we grow older and seek deeper, more meaningful connections. Misreading someone's intentions can lead to mistakes we regret, misplaced trust, misunderstandings that strain relationships, or even missed opportunities for growth. But imagine for a moment, what if you had the ability to decode the unspoken words, to read between the lines and truly understand what someone is thinking, not just what they're saying out loud? Wouldn't that make your interactions feel more confident, genuine, and fulfilling? But here's the thing. This isn't about manipulation or playing mind games. It's not about trying to read people in a way that makes you feel superior or in control. Instead, it's about reclaiming your power in conversations, knowing when to trust your instincts, and building relationships that are based on authenticity, trust, and mutual respect. Today, we're diving into how Buddhist philosophy, one of the oldest and most profound wisdom traditions, can help you unlock these hidden messages. Using the timeless teachings of Buddhism, we'll explore how you can read people's minds, not through magic or mind tricks, but through the power of mindfulness, keen observation, emotional awareness, and deep empathy. By learning to embrace these principles, you'll be able to turn confusion into clarity and misunderstandings into meaningful connections. So, if you've ever felt that nagging sense of uncertainty after a conversation and wondered what was really going on, stick with me. Together, we'll unlock the secret to understanding people on a deeper level, making every interaction more meaningful, and creating relationships that are grounded in real understanding and trust. 1. Pay attention to body language, the unspoken language. Body language is a subtle, yet profoundly impactful form of communication. It's an unspoken language that transcends words, one that expresses emotions, intentions, and states of mind far beyond what we might verbally articulate. Each gesture, posture, and even the smallest movement of the eyes carries meaning, often revealing more than what's said aloud. In today's fast-paced, distracted world, we frequently overlook these silent cues. We tend to focus on the words being spoken, missing the deeper, unspoken truths that are being communicated through body language. This is where the practice of mindfulness becomes so crucial. In Buddhism, mindfulness, sati, refers to the ability to be fully present in the moment, without distraction or judgment. It involves observing the world around us with clarity and awareness, but not just our inner thoughts. Mindfulness extends to how we observe others, how we engage with their energy, and how we understand their nonverbal communication. By practicing mindfulness in our interactions, we become attuned to the subtleties of body language and the messages it conveys. Imagine you're sitting in a cozy cafe with a close friend. They smile warmly and tell you everything is fine, but as they speak, you notice their eyes avoid yours and their fingers fidget restlessly around their cup. Their smile doesn't reach their eyes, and there's an air of discomfort that's impossible to ignore. Despite their reassuring words, their body language reveals something different, a deep unease, perhaps, or even a hidden anxiety. This is an example of how body language can communicate feelings that are hidden behind the words. When you learn to read these physical cues, you start to hear what's truly being communicated, even if it isn't said aloud. But how can we begin to decode this silent language of the body? The key is to start paying attention to the small, often subtle details that most of us tend to overlook. For instance, consider the way someone nods during a conversation. A slow, deliberate nod might signal agreement or understanding, but if the person's shoulders are slumped or their body seems rigid, it could be a sign of reluctance or even disagreement. Direct eye contact usually conveys confidence and openness, but a fleeting glance, one that quickly shifts away, might indicate discomfort, anxiety, or even avoidance. These signs aren't always obvious, but by becoming mindful of them, you can begin to decode what's really going on beneath the surface. There's a personal experience that stands out for me, one that really highlighted the importance of paying attention to body language. A few years ago, I was in a business meeting with a colleague who, verbally, expressed complete support for my proposal. He nodded enthusiastically, offered positive feedback, and assured me that he was on board. However, as the meeting went on, I couldn't help but notice that his feet, under the table, were constantly shifting. They weren't planted firmly. Instead, they seemed restless, almost as if he couldn't stay still. While his words conveyed support, his body language, his feet moving uneasily, revealed a different story. His actions showed hesitation, and I realized that despite his verbal agreement, there were concerns he hadn't yet voiced. By observing these small physical cues, I was able to adjust my approach, making space for a more open and honest conversation. We eventually addressed his concerns, and this allowed us to move forward in a more productive way. This experience taught me an important lesson. In every interaction, people communicate with more than just their words. Their bodies, how they sit, how they move, how they react, are constantly sending signals. And it's through mindfulness that we can begin to tune into these unspoken messages. The more we practice being aware of body language, the more we understand what is really being communicated. Buddhism, at its core, emphasizes the importance of non-judgmental awareness. In the context of body language, this means observing without immediately jumping to conclusions or making assumptions. It's easy to misinterpret someone's gestures or expressions based on our own biases, experiences, or expectations. But mindfulness encourages us to approach each situation with an open and calm mind, free from preconceived notions. By observing body language in this way, without judgment, we allow ourselves to truly understand what someone is feeling and experiencing. Take, for example, a situation where someone is speaking to you with a calm tone but avoids eye contact or stands with their arms crossed. It's tempting to assume that they're uninterested, closed off, or disengaged. However, mindfulness teaches us that we should refrain from making these judgments too quickly. Instead, we should take the time to observe and understand the deeper context. Perhaps the person is shy, anxious, or simply feeling uncomfortable in the moment. Maybe they're trying to process their thoughts internally, and their body language reflects their inner world. Through mindfulness, we can create space for these observations, allowing us to connect with others on a more profound level. Buddhism also emphasizes the interconnectedness of all things. This interconnectedness is reflected in how we understand body language. Every gesture, every movement, is tied to a larger emotional or mental state. When we observe someone's body language, we are seeing a reflection of their inner experience, their thoughts, feelings, and desires. By learning to read these signals, we can develop a deeper empathy and understanding, which is the foundation for building authentic relationships. Furthermore, mindfulness encourages us to approach others with compassion, not just in our actions, but also in our interpretations of their body language. If someone is standing with their arms crossed or avoiding eye contact, rather than interpreting this as a sign of disinterest or hostility, we might consider that they may be feeling defensive or vulnerable. By practicing mindful awareness, we are better able to respond with empathy and support, rather than reacting out of judgment or misunderstanding. Body language, when viewed through the lens of Buddhist mindfulness, becomes a doorway to a deeper connection with others. It allows us to go beyond surface-level communication and engage with people on a more profound level. As we learn to observe these physical cues without judgment, we begin to unlock a fuller understanding of the emotional states and intentions of those around us. In doing so, we strengthen our relationships and foster a sense of trust and authenticity in every interaction. Ultimately, the ability to read body language is not about manipulating others or gaining an advantage. It's about cultivating a deeper awareness of the world around us and the people we engage with. It's about learning to see beyond the surface, to grasp the unspoken truths, and to connect with others in a way that transcends words. Through mindfulness, we open ourselves to the richness of human experience. allowing us to navigate the complexities of relationships with compassion, clarity, and insight. In this way, the practice of mindfulness can transform not only how we see others, but also how we understand ourselves in the process. 2. Observe micro-expressions, the fleeting truths. Micro-expressions are quick, almost imperceptible flashes of emotion that pass over someone's face in a fraction of a second. Yet they carry with them profound insights into a person's true feelings. They're the subtle signals we often miss, yet they reveal more than words ever could. In the rush of our daily lives, we're so accustomed to reading faces for the bigger, more obvious cues, smiles, frowns, raised eyebrows, that we often overlook these fleeting moments of emotional truth. But it's in these micro-expressions that the essence of a person's feelings lies. In Buddhism, mindfulness teaches us to be fully present in the moment, to witness the ebb and flow of emotions without judgment or distraction. When we bring this awareness to our interactions with others, we open ourselves up to reading the smallest shifts in their expressions. A slight tightening of the lips, a flicker of uncertainty in the eyes. These are the things we begin to notice when we cultivate mindfulness in our relationships. Micro-expressions are like secret windows into the soul, revealing emotions that may be hidden beneath the surface, often unconsciously, yet always present. Consider a moment when you're having a conversation with someone, and they smile at you while agreeing with your plan. The smile seems genuine enough, but as you continue speaking, you notice something unusual. For just an instant, their brow furrows. The edges of their mouth tighten in a way that suggests unease. This subtle change happens so quickly that if you aren't paying close attention, you might miss it entirely. But there it is, a fleeting signal of doubt or discomfort. Perhaps they don't feel entirely convinced, or may have reservations they haven't voiced. It's not in their words, but in that brief moment, that you can see the unspoken truth. The real challenge, however, is catching these micro-expressions before they vanish. These are not overt expressions like a frown or a raised eyebrow that can linger for a few seconds. Micro-expressions come and go in the blink of an eye, often lasting no longer than half a second. But it's in that minuscule time frame that they reveal the essence of a person's feelings. To detect them, you have to train your mind to be fully present, to observe with a deep level of awareness that is cultivated through mindfulness. When it comes to identifying micro-expressions, the eyes, mouth, and forehead are the key areas to watch. These parts of the face are incredibly expressive and can convey a range of emotions that words cannot. A quick widening of the eyes, for example, might indicate surprise, fear, or shock. Similarly, a slight narrowing of the eyes could be a signal of suspicion or concern. The mouth is also a powerful indicator, while a genuine smile usually involves the whole face, particularly the eyes. A forced or fleeting smile often shows only in the mouth and is accompanied by tension in the jaw. A slight twitch, a barely perceptible tightening of the lips, can signal discomfort or reluctance, even if the person is verbally agreeing with you. I remember a time in a professional setting when a colleague, while nodding in agreement to my proposal, hesitated when I asked for further input. His words were positive, his tone encouraging, but something in his body language didn't match. As I observed him more closely, I noticed a subtle twitch in his lips, a barely there shift that lasted only a moment, but was enough to signal that something wasn't quite right. His words and his body weren't in alignment. He was uncomfortable, but was not willing to express it directly. Instead of pushing forward with the conversation, I paused and acknowledged the discomfort in a gentle way, allowing him to open up. This small moment of awareness helped foster a more honest dialogue, and by addressing his concerns, we were able to work through the issue and come to a better, more collaborative solution. The beauty of micro-expressions is that they reveal what lies beneath the surface. People may not always be able to express themselves clearly through words, either because they are unaware of their feelings or because they fear expressing vulnerability. But the micro-expressions they emit are the truth they cannot hide. By honing our ability to observe these fleeting signals, we can connect with others on a deeper, more empathetic level. Buddhism teaches us that everything in life is impermanent, or anicca. Emotions, like everything else, are fleeting. They arise in an instant and, just as quickly, they pass away. This recognition allows us to approach others with greater understanding and compassion. Just as we are aware of the impermanence of our own emotions, we can recognize the impermanence in the emotions of others. The micro-expressions we see are not fixed. They are temporary glimpses into someone's emotional landscape. When we understand this, we can approach others with patience, allowing them the space to express their feelings without judgment or rush. One of the core principles of Buddhist mindfulness is to observe without attachment. When we look at micro-expressions, we should avoid interpreting them in a way that reinforces our own biases or preconceived notions. If we see someone with their eyes briefly narrowing, we might instinctively think they are angry or upset. But mindfulness encourages us to pause before jumping to conclusions. Instead, we observe with an open mind and an open heart, allowing ourselves to truly feel what the other person is going through without immediately labeling it. This practice helps us connect with others in a way that fosters empathy and reduces misunderstanding. By focusing on micro-expressions, we also begin to deepen our relationship with ourselves. As we pay closer attention to others, we also become more aware of our own emotional reactions, our own body language, and the subtle signals we send out. This process of self-awareness is transformative. It allows us to become more attuned to our emotions, more mindful of how we express ourselves, and more aware of how our feelings can be communicated to others, even without words. In many ways, micro-expressions are the doorway to a richer, more authentic understanding of the people around us. They are not just signs of discomfort or unease. They are windows into the complexity of human experience. In recognizing these fleeting moments, we give ourselves the gift of truly connecting with others, of seeing beyond the surface, and of creating relationships built on empathy and understanding. By incorporating the practice of mindfulness into our observations of these micro-expressions, we move closer to a state of true understanding. We learn to read between the lines of what is being said, not just through words, but through the silent language of the body. And in this deepening of awareness, we unlock a new level of connection, compassion, and insight in all of our relationships. 3. Listen actively, understanding beyond words. Listening is often seen as a simple act, but true listening goes far beyond just hearing words. It is an art, one that requires intentionality, attention, and presence. In Buddhism, we are encouraged to listen with mindfulness, which means being fully engaged, not only with the words being spoken, but also with the emotions, intentions, and energy behind them. True listening requires us to be attentive to the subtext, to the pauses, and to what is not being said, as much as to the words themselves. Think about a time when you were speaking to someone, and despite them nodding along and maintaining eye contact, you sensed something was off. Maybe their smile didn't quite reach their eyes, or they seemed distracted, even though their words told a different story. This is where the power of active listening comes in. It helps us hear beyond the words. It allows us to tune into the underlying emotions, the unspoken concerns, and the subtle cues that reveal what someone is truly experiencing. Often, people speak in ways that obscure their deeper feelings, either because they're unaware of them or because they fear expressing them outright. Active listening helps us peel back the layers and connect with others on a deeper level. Imagine you're catching up with an old friend over coffee. They excitedly talk about their new job, describing how great everything is. The tone of their voice is upbeat, and their words are filled with enthusiasm. But if you listen carefully, you might notice a slight hesitation after certain statements. Perhaps they pause just a moment too long after saying, "It's going great," or their eyes wander off to the side when they mention a challenging project. These subtle signs, pauses, shifts in tone, a change in posture, tell you something beyond the words themselves. They suggest that, while they may be saying everything is fine, there's more to the story that they might not yet be ready to share. This is the essence of active listening. It's not just hearing the words, it's understanding what's behind them, and sometimes, what's left unsaid. In Buddhist teachings, mindfulness is not just about noticing what's happening in our own minds but also about being fully present with others in our interactions. When we listen with mindfulness, we are tuning in to the present moment without judgment or distraction. We are fully available for the other person, allowing ourselves to experience their world through their words and their nonverbal cues. This presence creates a safe space for the other person to express themselves more fully, knowing they are being heard not just with the ears, but with the heart and mind as well. The art of active listening requires us to eliminate distractions. In today's world, where we're constantly multitasking and surrounded by noise, it's easy to let our attention wander. But to truly hear someone, we need to give them our full focus. This means putting away our phones, closing our laptops, and setting aside whatever mental clutter might be pulling us away from the conversation. When we listen actively, we create an environment where the other person feels seen and valued. This can be incredibly powerful, as it not only helps us understand the speaker's point of view, but also builds trust and connection. Buddhism teaches us to practice deep presence, which means being so fully immersed in the moment that we let go of any distractions, judgments, or preconceived notions. This presence allows us to listen without interference, without the mind trying to fill in the gaps or make assumptions. Often, when we're listening to someone, our minds are already busy preparing our response or making conclusions based on past experiences. But mindfulness encourages us to listen with an open mind, to stay receptive to what's being said, and to be aware of the subtle emotional currents beneath the surface of the conversation. By practicing deep presence, we can cultivate a genuine understanding of others that goes beyond mere words. Consider how often in our daily interactions we focus solely on what is being said, without paying attention to how it's being said. It's easy to get caught up in the content of the message, especially if it's something we find engaging or if it sparks a reaction within us. But true listening requires us to tune into the tone, the pace, and the rhythm of speech. Does the speaker seem rushed? Are they speaking quickly, as if trying to finish the conversation? Or do they speak slowly, with pauses between thoughts, as if they are carefully considering each word? These subtle variations in speech patterns can tell us much about a person's emotional state or level of comfort with the subject matter. Active listening also involves noticing how the speaker's body language aligns or conflicts with their words. Are they making eye contact? Or are their eyes shifting nervously? Are their shoulders relaxed? Or is there tension in their posture? These physical cues are often more telling than the words themselves. In the same way that we observe body language to decode hidden messages, we must also pay attention to the body language during conversation. This holistic approach to listening deepens our ability to empathize and connect. Another key element of active listening is the ability to listen to silence. In many conversations, pauses can feel uncomfortable, so we rush to fill them with words. But these moments of silence can be crucial for understanding. Sometimes, the pauses are where the real meaning lies. A pause before answering may indicate that the speaker is processing something difficult, or that they need time to organize their thoughts. In these moments, it's important to resist the urge to interrupt. Instead, we can offer the space for the other person to reflect and find the right words to express their feelings. Buddhism encourages us to be patient, both with ourselves and with others. This patience is especially valuable in conversations, where we often want immediate answers or reactions. But the practice of mindful listening teaches us to let go of this urgency. It asks us to be present in the moment and to trust that, in time, the person will share what they need to. This patience fosters a deeper level of communication, one that is rooted in mutual respect and understanding. When we truly listen to others, we allow them to feel heard and acknowledged in a way that words alone cannot achieve. In the context of personal relationships, the ability to listen actively is a powerful tool for building trust and intimacy. When someone feels that they are truly being listened to, it creates a bond of understanding that goes beyond the surface level. It's in these moments of deep listening that true connection can blossom. When we listen mindfully, we open up a space where both the speaker and the listener can experience a sense of shared presence, creating a foundation of trust and empathy that strengthens the relationship. To practice active listening, we must approach every conversation with intention. We must listen not just to respond but to understand. We must allow ourselves to be fully present, without distractions, judgments, or preconceived notions. By doing so, we create the conditions for deeper connection and greater understanding, not only of others, but also of ourselves. When we truly listen, we begin to see the world through the eyes of others, and in doing so, we open ourselves to a richer, more compassionate experience of life. 4. Understand emotional triggers, the roots of behavior. Our emotions often govern our actions in ways that are not always immediately clear, both to ourselves and to others. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, it's easy to react impulsively, to allow emotions to dictate our behavior without taking the time to understand their origins. However, if we take a step back and observe our emotional responses with mindfulness, we can begin to uncover the unconscious forces at play. Buddhist teachings offer a powerful framework for this understanding through the concept of the 5 aggregates, skandhas, which highlight the interconnectedness of our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. By recognizing the emotional triggers that shape our actions, we can start to navigate our interactions with greater clarity and empathy, fostering deeper and more meaningful connections. Imagine you're in a conversation with someone, and suddenly, they raise their voice or become visibly defensive. At first glance, it may seem like they're simply being aggressive or confrontational. You might feel the urge to respond in kind, perhaps even feeling defensive yourself. But if you pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and apply mindfulness, you might start to notice that there is more at play than just surface-level frustration. The person's behavior may be rooted in a fear of being misunderstood or criticized. They may be reacting from a place of vulnerability, not aggression. Understanding the emotional triggers behind their reaction helps you to respond more thoughtfully, with empathy, rather than adding fuel to the fire. This is where mindfulness, especially within the context of Buddhist teachings, can be incredibly transformative. Buddhism teaches us to be aware of our emotions as they arise, without judgment or reactivity. By being mindful of our emotional triggers, we can begin to see them for what they truly are, passing phenomena that arise due to certain conditions. Emotions themselves are impermanent, and the reactions they provoke do not define us. By understanding this, we can avoid reacting impulsively and instead choose a more thoughtful and compassionate response. When we are able to recognize emotional triggers in ourselves and others, we can begin to navigate our relationships with greater wisdom. For example, when you're engaged in a difficult conversation and notice that the other person's posture changes or their tone becomes sharper, you might take a moment to ask yourself what emotional trigger they are responding to. Is it the fear of being invalidated? The worry that their ideas won't be respected? Perhaps it's a long-standing insecurity that has been touched upon, either intentionally or unintentionally. Rather than assuming the worst, mindfulness allows us to take a more compassionate approach and respond with curiosity and understanding. Instead of escalating the situation, we can ask open-ended questions, acknowledge their feelings, and offer them space to express themselves more fully. At the same time, it's important to become aware of our own emotional triggers, just as others have their own set of emotional reactions that can shape their behavior. We too carry our own triggers, certain words, situations, or even tones of voice that might provoke an immediate response. In Buddhism, we are taught to observe our own mental states without attachment. This includes recognizing the moments when we feel triggered, understanding where those feelings are coming from, and choosing not to react automatically. The practice of self-awareness allows us to respond in a way that is more aligned with our values and less influenced by the emotional turbulence of the moment. Consider the times when you felt yourself getting defensive in a conversation, perhaps even raising your voice or withdrawing entirely. What caused that reaction? Was it a specific word or phrase? Was it a certain dynamic that brought up past hurts or insecurities? Buddhist mindfulness teaches us to examine these moments with gentleness, without criticism or self-blame. By acknowledging our triggers, we gain insight into what's happening beneath the surface. We recognize that the emotions we experience are often the result of long-held beliefs, past experiences, or even cultural conditioning. Once we understand these roots, we can begin to disarm them, choosing not to let them control us in the future. One of the most profound aspects of emotional triggers is that they are often unconscious. In a heated moment, we may not even be aware of what's driving our behavior. However, with mindful awareness, we can slow down and start to identify the patterns. Perhaps you've noticed that certain situations make you feel particularly anxious or defensive. This could be a trigger. Or maybe there are recurring conflicts in your relationships that stem from miscommunication or unspoken expectations. By recognizing the emotional triggers at play, you can begin to shift your responses, both with yourself and with others. Buddhism teaches us that everything is interconnected, and this includes our emotions, thoughts, and behaviors. Our reactions are not random. They are the result of causes and conditions. When we begin to understand the roots of our emotions, we can gain clarity on the best course of action. Rather than reacting in anger, we can respond with compassion. Instead of withdrawing into silence, we can communicate our needs with honesty. By understanding the emotional triggers that shape our behavior, we can avoid misunderstandings and create more harmonious interactions. As we become more adept at recognizing emotional triggers in ourselves and others, we can approach difficult conversations with greater skill. Imagine you're in a discussion where tensions are high. You might notice that someone is becoming defensive, their body language stiffening and their voice rising. In the past, this might have prompted you to become defensive as well, leading to an impasse. But now, with a deeper understanding of emotional triggers, you can pause, breathe, and respond more thoughtfully. You might acknowledge the other person's discomfort, reassure them that their feelings are valid, and invite them to share more openly. By doing so, you create a space for both people to express their emotions without fear of judgment, allowing the conversation to move from conflict to resolution. At the heart of understanding emotional triggers is the practice of empathy. Buddhism teaches us that compassion for others begins with understanding their experiences, and understanding often starts with recognizing the emotions that shape their behavior. By tuning into these emotional currents, we can respond with kindness and create an environment of trust and respect. In this way, understanding emotional triggers not only allows us to better navigate our relationships, but also deepens our capacity to live with greater wisdom and compassion. In conclusion, emotional triggers are a powerful force that shape our interactions with others. By bringing mindfulness and self-awareness into our relationships, we can begin to understand the unconscious forces that drive our behavior and the behavior of those around us. Buddhism offers valuable tools for recognizing these triggers and responding with empathy, helping us to transform difficult situations into opportunities for connection, growth, and healing. The more we practice mindfulness in recognizing emotional triggers, the more we unlock the potential for more harmonious and authentic relationships. 5. Analyze the context and environment. Everything matters. Buddhism teaches us that everything is interconnected. Our thoughts, emotions, and actions are influenced by our environment, our state of mind, and the people around us. In the same way that a tree cannot grow without the right soil, water, and sunlight, our reactions and behaviors are shaped by the conditions and circumstances in which we find ourselves. This is particularly important when it comes to communication. We often focus on the words spoken, the body language, or the immediate emotional reactions of others. Yet, the broader context in which those words are spoken, everything that surrounds the conversation, can offer crucial insights into a person's true feelings and motivations. When we engage with others, it's essential to take into account not only the content of what is said, but also the environment in which the conversation takes place. In Buddhist philosophy, mindfulness extends beyond our internal thoughts and emotions. It encourages us to observe the world around us with a keen awareness of its influence on our interactions. Just as the setting sun casts a different light on the same landscape, the context of a conversation can dramatically alter the way we perceive the emotions and intentions of others. Think about a situation where you are speaking with a colleague who appears to be agitated or defensive. Perhaps they raise their voice or give short, curt responses. Your instinct might be to feel rejected or confrontational in return. You might assume that they are upset with you or that they simply don't care about your ideas. However, what if you took a moment to consider the broader context? What if your colleague has just come from a meeting with their boss, where they received harsh feedback? Or perhaps they're dealing with personal issues outside of work that have left them emotionally drained. In such a high-stress environment, their reaction may have less to do with you personally and more to do with their current emotional state or external pressures. This is where mindfulness becomes an invaluable tool. By cultivating awareness of the context in which we are engaging with others, we are less likely to misinterpret their feelings or assume the worst. Buddhism teaches us to approach others with compassion and understanding, recognizing that people's behavior is often shaped by factors beyond their immediate control. It's not always easy to remember this in the heat of the moment, but a mindful approach invites us to pause and consider the bigger picture before reacting. Let's explore this further with another example. Imagine you're having a conversation with a friend, and they seem distant or disengaged. They might not be making much eye contact or might be checking their phone repeatedly. Your initial reaction might be frustration or hurt. Perhaps you think they're not interested in what you have to say, or that they're purposely ignoring you. But then, you learn that your friend has been dealing with a difficult situation at home. Maybe they're overwhelmed with family responsibilities, or they're going through a personal crisis. Now, you see their behavior in a completely different light. What seemed like disinterest or rudeness may actually have been a sign of emotional exhaustion or stress. By understanding the context of their situation, you gain a deeper level of empathy and can offer them the space and support they need. Context is not just about external factors. It also involves understanding the mental and emotional environment of the people around us. Our own emotional state can shape how we interpret the behavior of others. If we are feeling stressed, anxious, or upset, we may perceive even neutral actions as threatening or dismissive. This is why mindfulness is so powerful. It helps us step out of our own emotional world for a moment and observe what's happening in the present without distortion. By being present and aware, we can understand the true nature of the conversation and the emotions that may be influencing it. This is particularly important in the context of relationships, whether personal or professional. Relationships are dynamic, and they are always influenced by the circumstances in which they unfold. Consider a workplace where there's a lot of pressure to meet deadlines. If a colleague appears impatient or sharp in their communication, it may not necessarily mean they have an issue with you. They may simply be feeling the weight of the deadline, or they might be worried about the consequences of not meeting expectations. The pressure they are under is shaping how they interact with others. By recognizing the context, you avoid taking their behavior personally and instead approach the situation with patience and understanding. Moreover, analyzing the context helps us understand our own responses to others. Sometimes, we may find ourselves reacting strongly to someone else's behavior without fully understanding why. If we take a step back and assess the environment, we might realize that our emotional triggers are influencing our reaction. Perhaps we're already feeling tense from a stressful day or dealing with unresolved conflicts in our personal life. Our emotional state could be coloring our perception of the situation. Recognizing this allows us to respond with more clarity and composure, rather than reacting from a place of heightened emotion. In Buddhism, we are taught that everything is impermanent, anicca. This includes the emotional states we experience and the external conditions that influence us. The ability to recognize that everything is in flux, including the context of a conversation, enables us to cultivate patience and equanimity. We learn to observe without clinging to judgments or expectations, allowing the situation to unfold naturally. By doing so, we can better understand others and respond with compassion, rather than reacting impulsively or defensively. It's also important to consider the broader societal and cultural context in which a conversation is taking place. Cultural norms, social expectations, and even historical factors can shape how we communicate and interpret behavior. For example, in some cultures, direct confrontation or open expression of emotions may be viewed as disrespectful or inappropriate. In other contexts, it may be seen as necessary for resolving conflicts. Understanding these differences is key to building effective communication across cultures and fostering mutual respect. Before we jump to conclusions or become frustrated with someone's behavior, it's crucial to assess the broader situation with an open heart and mind. Is there external stress affecting them? Are they dealing with emotional struggles that are not immediately apparent? Is their behavior influenced by a particular event or set of circumstances? By embracing a mindful approach and considering the context of a conversation, we gain a more complete understanding of the situation. This enables us to respond in a way that is compassionate, empathetic, and constructive. In the end, understanding the context in which a conversation takes place can be just as important as the words spoken. By taking into account the environment, emotional states, and external pressures that influence behavior, we can create deeper, more authentic connections with those around us. Mindfulness allows us to observe with clarity and compassion, helping us navigate complex interactions with wisdom and patience. When we recognize that everything is interconnected, our words, our actions, and the world around us, we can approach communication with a greater sense of understanding, and in doing so, foster relationships that are built on trust, respect, and mutual care. 6. Watch for inconsistencies in speech and actions, the key to hidden truths. In Buddhist philosophy, one of the core principles is right speech, samavaka, which emphasizes aligning our words with our inner truth. This concept encourages us to be mindful of how we communicate, ensuring that what we say reflects our authentic feelings and intentions. Yet, in our interactions with others, we often encounter moments where what is spoken does not quite match what is being conveyed through body language, tone, or actions. These inconsistencies are not just accidental slips, but can be powerful indicators that something deeper is at play, something beneath the surface that may not be immediately visible. Consider a situation where someone tells you they're fine, but their voice lacks warmth, and their posture is slumped or defensive. The words may suggest one thing, but their body language tells a different story. Perhaps their arms are crossed, their face is tense, or their gaze is diverted. These subtle cues create a mismatch between their speech and actions, signaling a deeper layer of emotion that is not being openly expressed. This dissonance is often a powerful invitation for us to dig a little deeper, to move beyond the surface level of the conversation and understand what might be hidden behind the walls of words. Such inconsistencies are incredibly common in our everyday interactions, but they are often overlooked in the rush of daily life. We tend to focus on the content of what is being said, taking it at face value, without considering the nonverbal cues that may contradict it. But in Buddhist practice, mindfulness teaches us to observe the present moment with clarity and presence, encouraging us to notice these inconsistencies and interpret them with a compassionate eye. When we cultivate awareness in this way, we begin to unravel the hidden emotions, insecurities, or unresolved conflicts that may be influencing a person's behavior. I remember a time in a meeting when a colleague seemed to express support for a project I was leading. They smiled, nodded, and verbally assured me that everything was on track. However, as the conversation continued, I noticed that they kept fidgeting with a pen, their eyes shifting away from mine, and they avoided direct engagement when I asked for feedback. These actions contradicted their words. Their speech conveyed enthusiasm, but their body language suggested uncertainty or discomfort. By paying attention to this inconsistency, I was able to sense that, despite their verbal support, they had concerns that they had not yet voiced. This observation allowed me to gently probe further and ultimately uncover the root of their hesitation, which led to a more open and productive dialogue. Buddhism encourages us to be true to our words and actions, fostering a sense of integrity in our communication. When we observe inconsistencies in others, rather than judging them or making assumptions, we are invited to approach the situation with curiosity and compassion. In Buddhist teachings, this approach is rooted in the practice of non-judgmental awareness, which helps us see things as they truly are, without the filter of our biases or preconceived notions. Instead of assuming that someone is lying or being deceitful, mindfulness asks us to hold space for the possibility that their words and actions are merely pointing to an underlying truth that they may not yet feel ready to express fully. For example, Imagine a situation where someone tells you that they're happy, but their face is clouded with sadness, or they seem distracted. If we are quick to dismiss these signs and accept their words at face value, we miss the opportunity to understand them more deeply. However, by observing the inconsistencies and allowing ourselves to stay present with their emotional cues, we open the door to deeper empathy. Perhaps they are struggling with something internally, but for various reasons, fear, shame, or even habit, they are not yet comfortable sharing their true feelings. By acknowledging these inconsistencies with patience and understanding, we create the space for them to feel heard and safe enough to express themselves more honestly. Recognizing these inconsistencies is not about pointing out someone's flaws or exploiting their vulnerabilities. It's not about interrogating them or trying to catch them in a lie. Rather, it's about practicing a compassionate awareness that seeks to understand the fuller story. Just as the Buddha taught that suffering is a natural part of life, it is through mindfulness that we can begin to see beyond the masks people wear and recognize the suffering or confusion they might be trying to hide. In this way, we can offer them the compassion they need without rushing to conclusions or judgment. When we encounter inconsistencies in others' speech and actions, it's important to remember that people often mask their true emotions for a variety of reasons. Fear of vulnerability, cultural expectations, social conditioning, or even a desire to protect others can all contribute to this discrepancy. Sometimes, the gap between words and actions is not about deception, but about a person's inability to fully express what they are experiencing. By observing these inconsistencies with a calm and non-reactive mind, we can better understand the complexity of the human experience and respond with kindness rather than frustration. In Buddhist practice, there is also a recognition that everything is impermanent, anicca. This impermanence applies to emotions and thoughts as well. Just because someone appears to be saying one thing while showing another signal doesn't mean that they are fixed in that moment. Emotions shift, circumstances change, and our inner worlds are constantly evolving. By understanding this impermanence, we can offer others the space and grace to move through their feelings without feeling pressured to conform to any one narrative or expectation. This is especially important in our relationships, as it allows us to approach others with greater flexibility and openness, allowing them to express themselves authentically without fear of judgment. In essence, the power of observing inconsistencies in speech and actions lies in our ability to listen deeply, not just with our ears, but with our whole being. It's an invitation to practice deeper empathy and understanding, to see people as they truly are, rather than as the story they might be telling us in words alone. By cultivating mindfulness, we can connect with the hidden truths beneath the surface and build relationships that are based on authenticity, compassion, and mutual respect. In this way, our communication becomes not just about exchanging words, but about creating a space where both people feel seen and understood. When we practice the art of noticing inconsistencies, we are not only uncovering the truth of the moment, but we are also nurturing a deeper, more meaningful connection with others, one that transcends mere words and reveals the unspoken truths that often carry the most weight. 7. Be aware of the power of silence. Understanding the unspoken. Silence is often misunderstood in a world that values quick responses and constant communication. Yet, it can be just as powerful as the words we speak. In fact, silence often holds a richness of meaning that words cannot capture. In Buddhist practice, silence is not an absence, it is a presence, a space in which truths can emerge and deeper understanding can take root. It is in the stillness between thoughts, words, and actions where we can discover the unspoken layers of communication that connect us to one another. Imagine sitting with a friend who has just shared something deeply personal. They fall silent, their eyes downcast, and their hands rest still in their lap. The silence between you may feel heavy or even awkward, but in that moment, it holds significance. Perhaps they are reflecting on what they've just revealed or processing how they feel about it. Or perhaps they are waiting, hoping you will respond not with words, but with presence, with the quiet reassurance that you are there, truly listening. Without judgment or expectation, silence is not empty. It is a container for emotions that are too complex or vulnerable to articulate. In conversations, we are often uncomfortable with silence, rushing to fill it with words or assumptions. But in doing so, we may miss an opportunity to truly connect with the other person. Silence can signify hesitation, uncertainty, or even fear, but it can also be a sign of deep thought, reflection, or an invitation for you to step closer into their world. Buddhist mindfulness encourages us to be present in these moments, to sit with the silence instead of trying to break it, and to listen with our whole being rather than just our ears. For example, during a difficult conversation, someone might pause for a long moment before responding. It's easy to misinterpret this pause as a lack of engagement or avoidance. But what if it's something deeper? What if that silence is their way of carefully considering their words or emotions? Perhaps they're trying to gather the courage to express something vulnerable or painful. If we rush in to fill the gap with our own words, we may unintentionally close the door on their deeper truths. But if we simply hold the space, allowing the silence to linger, we create an environment where they feel safe to share more openly. I remember a time when a close friend was going through a significant loss. We sat together, and for what felt like hours, they barely spoke. At first, I felt compelled to say something, anything, to fill the quiet, but instead, I chose to stay present and listen, not to their words, because there were none, but to their silence. That silence spoke volumes. It carried their grief, their pain, and their need for companionship without the burden of conversation. In that moment, my role was not to solve or fix, but simply to be there, to witness their experience without trying to change it. It was in the silence that the connection between us deepened, beyond what words could achieve. Silence also has a way of revealing what lies beneath the surface. When someone withdraws into silence, it might be a sign that they are feeling overwhelmed, uncertain, or unsure of how to articulate their thoughts. This is especially true in situations where emotions are running high. A child, for instance, might go silent when they feel afraid or misunderstood, retreating into the safety of their own quiet. Similarly, an adult might stop speaking in the middle of an argument, not because they have nothing to say, but because their emotions have taken hold, and they need a moment to process. Recognizing these moments requires patience and empathy. Instead of assuming that silence means disengagement or disinterest, mindfulness teaches us to approach it with curiosity and compassion, asking ourselves what the silence might be saying. In relationships, both personal and professional, the ability to hold space for silence is an invaluable skill. It signals to the other person that you are present, that you are not rushing them, and that you are willing to sit with whatever discomfort or vulnerability the moment may bring. This is particularly important in conversations where trust and understanding are at stake. When we allow silence to unfold naturally, we give the other person permission to express themselves in their own time and in their own way. It's a gesture of respect, a way of saying, "I'm here, and I'm ready to listen whenever you're ready to speak." Buddhism also teaches us that silence is not just something we offer to others, it is something we practice within ourselves. In moments of silence, we are given the chance to reflect, to observe our thoughts and emotions without judgment, and to reconnect with our inner stillness. This inner silence is where clarity resides. It's where we can step back from the noise of the world and the chatter of our minds to see things as they truly are. When we cultivate this silence within ourselves, we become better equipped to hold space for it in our interactions with others. Consider how often silence is used in meditation as a means of gaining insight. The practice of sitting quietly, focusing on the breath, and simply being allows us to access a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us. This same principle applies to our relationships. By embracing silence in conversations, we create room for reflection, for understanding, and for connection. We learn to listen not just to what is said, but to what is felt, to the emotions and truths that lie beneath the surface. Silence can also be a powerful tool for conflict resolution. In heated moments, stepping back into silence can diffuse tension and provide space for both parties to gather their thoughts. It allows emotions to settle, giving way to clarity and reason. Instead of reacting impulsively, We can use silence as a pause, a moment to reflect on our intentions and choose our words with care. This mindful use of silence helps prevent misunderstandings and fosters a more constructive dialogue. In a world that often equates silence with weakness or awkwardness, Buddhism reminds us of its strength and its potential. Silence is not a void to be filled. It is a space to be honored. It is in silence that we find the courage to face what is difficult, the patience to understand what is complex, and the compassion to connect with what is unspoken. By being aware of the power of silence, we deepen our relationships, enhance our communication, and cultivate a sense of presence that transcends words. Ultimately, silence is not about the absence of sound. It is about the presence of understanding. It is about being fully there for someone, not just with your words, but with your entire being. When we embrace silence with mindfulness and compassion, we create a space where the unspoken can be heard, where emotions can be felt, and where connections can flourish. It is in the quiet moments, the pauses between the words, that the most meaningful communication often takes place. 8. Master the art of asking the right questions. Unlocking deeper understanding. Asking the right questions is a subtle art that holds the key to unlocking deeper understanding. It's not just about gathering information, it's about fostering connection, creating space for openness, and encouraging honesty. In Buddhism, the emphasis on skillful means, upaya, is woven deeply into the way we communicate. Skillful questioning, much like the Buddha's approach, isn't about asking the right thing at the right time for the sake of getting an answer. Instead, it's about the intention behind the question, the genuine curiosity and the compassion that drives it. When you ask a question from a place of mindfulness, you invite a dialogue that transcends surface-level exchanges and moves into the realm of true connection. Imagine a conversation with a friend who seems a bit off. You could ask the generic, "Are you okay?" But how often do people really open up with that kind of question? Most of the time, it's met with a quick, "I'm fine," a response that shields them from revealing what's truly going on inside. However, if you reframe the question with more thoughtfulness, something like, "What's been on your mind lately?" Or, "I noticed you seem a bit distant. How have you been feeling about a specific situation?" You create an opening. These questions invite reflection, giving the person space to think about their emotions and articulate them without feeling pressured. They shift the focus from a casual check-in to a more meaningful inquiry, showing that you're not just interested in a quick answer, but in truly understanding what lies beneath. The Buddha often used this type of questioning in his teachings, guiding his followers to explore their own minds and discover their truths. One of the most famous examples of this is when the Buddha asked a question that seems deceptively simple. What do you think? Are you in control of your own mind? This question, posed with deep compassion, wasn't meant to judge or criticize, but to guide the listener to examine their own beliefs and assumptions. By asking such a question, the Buddha invited his disciples into a space of reflection, enabling them to arrive at their own insights through their own contemplation. This is the essence of skillful questioning, not forcing an answer but helping someone arrive at their own deeper understanding. When we ask questions in a mindful and compassionate way, we not only uncover deeper truths, but we also create a safe space for others to open up. Think about the difference between a question asked with judgment or impatience, and one asked with kindness and genuine interest. The former may shut someone down or make them defensive, while the latter invites them to share their story, their struggles, or their feelings. Asking with curiosity allows us to step into another person's world, to momentarily leave behind our own perspective, and to engage with theirs in a way that's rooted in empathy. It's an invitation for a conversation that goes beyond the surface, touching on what truly matters to both parties. This skill becomes especially valuable when trying to understand the emotions and motivations of others. We all have our defenses and fears, whether it's the fear of judgment, of vulnerability, or of being misunderstood. By asking thoughtful, open-ended questions, we help dismantle these barriers. A question like, "What's been the hardest part of this for you?" Or, "How has this experience affected you?" allows the person to reflect on their internal experience and articulate it in a way that feels safe. It provides them with the freedom to explore their emotions without feeling the need to immediately hide or deflect them. Mastering the art of asking questions also requires patience. It's easy to rush through a conversation, to ask a question and immediately expect an answer. But when we do that, we risk missing the opportunity for deeper connection. Instead, mindfulness encourages us to pause, to give the person the space they need to answer thoughtfully. This pause, this moment of stillness, allows both you and the person you're speaking with to reflect on the question and the conversation as a whole. Sometimes, it's not the answer that's important, it's the process of asking, of exploring together. For instance, during a difficult conversation with a colleague, asking, "What do you think might be the underlying issue here?" instead of assuming the problem immediately, gives the other person space to think and share their perspective. Often, we assume we know the answer, but by asking questions with an open mind, we allow room for discovery. We may find that the issue is something entirely different from what we thought, or that there are feelings at play that we hadn't considered. In this way, questions become a tool not just for understanding others, but for developing a deeper understanding of ourselves as well. Another key aspect of asking the right questions is the ability to listen deeply to the answers. The Buddha taught that in order to truly understand, we must listen with our whole being. This means not just hearing the words, but listening to the tone, the pauses, the body language, and even the silence between words. When we ask questions with mindfulness, we are inviting someone to not only share their thoughts, but also their feelings, their uncertainties, and their experiences. But this requires us to listen without judgment, without trying to fix, and without jumping to conclusions. We must be present, just as we would be in a meditation practice, allowing the person to express themselves fully and authentically. When we combine mindfulness with the art of asking questions, we enter a space where the conversation becomes a journey of mutual discovery. Each question leads to a deeper understanding. Each answer opens a new window into the person's heart and mind. It's a process that fosters connection, empathy, and growth. Through skillful questioning, we don't just gather information, we build relationships, we uncover truths, and we create opportunities for healing and transformation. In a world that often values speed over depth, the art of asking thoughtful questions may seem like a slow and deliberate process, but in reality, it's one of the most profound ways to connect with others, to offer support, and to guide them towards self-discovery. As we ask questions with an open heart and a curious mind, we move beyond surface-level interactions and create a space where true dialogue can flourish. This is the gift of skillful questioning. It is a doorway to deeper understanding, to compassionate connection, and to wisdom. 9. Be mindful of emotional projection, the influence of our own emotions. Our emotions are powerful forces, shaping not only our own experiences, but also how we interact with and perceive others. Without mindfulness, these emotions can cloud our judgment and lead us to project our inner states onto those around us. We may see a colleague's quiet demeanor as indifference when, in reality, they are simply lost in thought. Or, we might interpret a friend's hesitation as rejection when they are merely uncertain about how to respond. This tendency to project is a natural part of being human, but it can create unnecessary tension and misunderstandings if left unchecked. This is where mindfulness, as taught in Buddhism, offers us a path to greater clarity and understanding. Mindfulness encourages us to be fully aware of our present state, our thoughts, feelings, and reactions, without attachment or judgment. It's through this lens of self-awareness that we can begin to notice when we are projecting our emotions onto others. When we are mindful, we can pause and ask ourselves, am I seeing this situation clearly, or is my own mood influencing how I perceive it? This simple question can help us step back from our immediate emotional responses and give us the space to reflect before acting or reacting. For instance, if you find yourself in a conversation with someone, and you're feeling irritated or upset about something unrelated to them, you may unconsciously project those feelings onto their words or actions. Perhaps they say something neutral or even positive, but because of your own emotional state, you interpret it as dismissive or condescending. In this moment, It is crucial to recognize the power of your own emotions and how they might be shaping your perception. By doing so, you can choose to release the attachment to these emotions, preventing them from influencing how you respond. This practice of mindfulness allows us to clear the lens through which we view others, enabling us to engage with them more objectively and compassionately. When we understand that our emotions are not the truth of the situation, we can more accurately perceive the feelings and intentions of those around us. It's like cleaning the fogged-up windows of a car. Once the emotional fog is cleared, we can see things as they truly are. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you are in a meeting at work, and someone suggests an idea that you immediately feel defensive about. Your mind races, and you begin to view the suggestion as criticism of your own work. But upon reflection, you realize that the defensiveness is rooted in your own insecurities, not in the actual content of the suggestion. When you take a moment to recognize this, you free yourself from the knee-jerk reaction of defensiveness. You can then approach the situation with a clearer mind, ready to engage with the idea in a more constructive way, without the emotional charge that would have led to an unhelpful response. This is the transformative power of mindfulness. It allows us to see ourselves and others more clearly, without the distortion of our emotional projections. Buddhism teaches that by understanding the impermanence of our emotions, we can avoid becoming attached to them. Emotions are transient, and they are not who we are. When we allow ourselves to be defined by our emotions, we risk letting them control our interactions and relationships. But when we recognize them for what they are, temporary states of mind that come and go, we can choose how we respond to them. The ability to separate our emotions from our perceptions of others is a skill that deepens with practice. It requires patience, self-awareness, and the willingness to observe our own reactions without judgment. In Buddhist meditation practices, such as Vipassana, practitioners learn to observe their thoughts and emotions as they arise, noting them without getting attached. This practice helps us develop the ability to notice our emotional states without letting them control our perceptions of the world. Over time, we become more adept at recognizing when we are projecting our feelings onto others, and we can choose to let go of those projections before they influence our interactions. Mindfulness also encourages us to develop compassion, not only for others but for ourselves as well. We all have moments when our emotions overwhelm us. There will be times when we find ourselves projecting anger, fear, or sadness onto others, not because we want to, but because we are human. In those moments, mindfulness allows us to acknowledge our emotions with kindness, without guilt or shame. We can recognize that it's okay to feel what we feel, but it's equally important to take responsibility for how those emotions influence our interactions. By doing so, we cultivate a sense of self-compassion that enables us to show up more authentically and mindfully in our relationships. When we clear the emotional projections, we also begin to respond to others with greater empathy. Instead of reacting defensively or assuming that someone's actions are intended to hurt us, we approach them with curiosity and understanding. We ask ourselves, what might they be experiencing? What might be their perspective? This shift in approach fosters deeper connection and trust. We are more likely to offer support, validation, and understanding, instead of judgment, criticism, or defensiveness. Over time, this practice not only enhances our relationships, but also strengthens our emotional resilience. As we become more aware of how our emotions shape our perceptions, we gain greater control over our reactions. Instead of allowing our emotions to dictate our interactions, we can choose to respond with greater awareness and intentionality. This leads to more harmonious relationships and a greater sense of peace within ourselves. One key aspect of mindfulness is recognizing that we are not our emotions. We experience emotions, but we are not defined by them. This distinction allows us to see that our emotions are just one part of the broader picture. When we can step back and observe our emotional reactions without identifying with them, we give ourselves the freedom to respond from a place of clarity and compassion. This not only deepens our understanding of ourselves, but also enhances our ability to connect with others in a meaningful way. By practicing mindfulness, we create space between our emotional reactions and our responses. This space allows us to pause, reflect, and choose how to engage with others in a more compassionate and understanding way. When we are mindful of emotional projection, we can approach each situation with an open heart and an open mind, free from the distortions of our own biases and emotional states. In doing so, we foster healthier, more authentic relationships, and ultimately, greater peace in our own hearts. 10. Cultivate compassion and empathy, the heart of true connection. The most profound and transformative skill in understanding others, in truly reading their hearts and minds, is compassion. In Buddhist teachings, we are reminded that all beings experience suffering, whether it's physical, emotional, or existential. Suffering is a universal part of the human condition. The key to unlocking deeper connections with others lies not in analyzing every detail of their behavior, but in recognizing their struggles and approaching them with understanding, kindness, and empathy. When we approach others with compassion, we begin to see them not as problems to be solved or puzzles to be figured out, but as individuals with their own challenges, fears, hopes, and dreams. It's easy to slip into a mindset of judgment or assumption, especially when we are faced with behaviors or words that confuse us. But when we allow compassion to guide us, we look beyond the surface. We begin to consider what might be happening in someone's life that could be influencing their actions, their words, or their energy. Compassion invites us to offer kindness, even in moments when we don't fully understand what the other person is going through. For instance, imagine a colleague who has been acting distant lately. Instead of feeling frustrated or hurt by their withdrawal, you might pause and consider, what could be happening in their life that's affecting their behavior? Are they facing personal struggles, or perhaps experiencing stress that they haven't shared? Rather than taking their behavior personally, compassion allows us to offer understanding without needing to know all the details. It's about holding space for others, allowing them the freedom to be themselves without fear of judgment. This compassionate approach can lead to profound shifts in how we perceive and interact with others. When we begin to cultivate compassion, we naturally start to notice the subtle, unspoken emotions that others may be carrying. You might observe a colleague who seems quieter than usual, their usual energy dimmed. While the words they speak may seem neutral, their body language might suggest sadness or exhaustion. Compassion allows you to see through these subtle cues, offering an opening for a deeper connection. Instead of ignoring these signs or assuming that the person is simply distant, you might ask them how they are doing, giving them the opportunity to share without fear of judgment. Buddhism teaches that compassion isn't just about understanding others, it's also about extending that same kindness to ourselves. Often, we are our harshest critics, judging ourselves for our emotions, actions, or perceived shortcomings. The practice of metta, or loving kindness meditation, encourages us to develop compassion not just for those around us, but for ourselves as well. By learning to treat ourselves with gentleness and understanding, we begin to extend that same compassion outward. When we are kinder to ourselves, we are more capable of offering that same kindness to others, creating a cycle of love and understanding that strengthens our relationships. Compassion is not just a feeling, it's a practice. It's something we cultivate over time, through small acts of kindness, attentive listening, and a willingness to offer our support when others need it most. When we make compassion a regular part of our interactions, we begin to notice the profound impact it has. We might see someone's body language soften when they sense that we are genuinely interested in their well-being. We may notice that people feel more comfortable opening up, sharing their thoughts and feelings with us. This trust is built over time, through consistent acts of compassion and understanding. One powerful aspect of compassion is that it doesn't require us to have all the answers. We don't need to fix someone's problems or provide a solution to their struggles. Sometimes, the most compassionate thing we can do is simply to listen. By offering a space where someone feels safe to express themselves without fear of criticism, we allow them to release their burdens and share their true feelings. It's through this act of listening with compassion that we truly begin to understand others. The Buddha often spoke about the importance of empathy, and how cultivating empathy allows us to break through the walls that separate us from others. Empathy is the ability to feel what another person is feeling, to put ourselves in their shoes, and to truly experience their joy or pain as if it were our own. It's not about feeling sorry for someone. It's about connecting with them on a deep emotional level, recognizing that their experience is valid and worthy of our attention. This kind of empathy opens up a world of connection. When we practice empathy, we stop seeing people as separate from ourselves, and instead, we see them as fellow travelers on the same journey. We understand that their struggles are not different from our own, and that their joys are not separate from our own happiness. We begin to see ourselves in others, and in turn, we develop a deeper sense of compassion for both them and ourselves. By cultivating compassion, we also deepen our own understanding of suffering. We begin to recognize that suffering is not a sign of weakness or failure, but a natural part of life. Everyone, regardless of their external circumstances, experiences moments of pain, doubt, or fear. This shared experience of suffering helps to break down the barriers that divide us. Instead of seeing others as other, we start to see them as human beings who, like us, are seeking happiness, peace, and understanding. In every relationship, whether personal or professional, compassion is the foundation of trust and genuine connection. When we show others that we are genuinely interested in their well-being, without judgment or expectation, we create a space where they can be authentic. This authenticity builds trust, and trust strengthens relationships. People feel seen and heard when we offer compassion, and they feel safe in our presence. In this way, compassion is not just about understanding others, it's also about creating a space where others feel comfortable expressing themselves. This kind of connection doesn't come from simply reading someone's words or analyzing their behavior. True connection comes from being fully present with them, offering them the gift of our attention, empathy, and kindness. When we bring compassion into our interactions, we shift the focus from trying to figure out what someone is thinking to truly understanding their heart. Ultimately, compassion is the key to unlocking the deeper truths that lie within others. It allows us to see beyond the surface-level interactions and to connect with the essence of who someone is. By practicing compassion, we not only transform our relationships, but we also cultivate peace within ourselves. Compassion is the heart of true connection, and through it, we can create a world where understanding, kindness, and empathy are the foundation of all our interactions. In the end, learning to read people's minds isn't about trying to predict their every move or manipulate their actions. It's about fostering deeper, more genuine connections that are built on mindfulness, empathy, and compassion. When we take the time to truly understand others, we open up the possibility for relationships that go beyond surface-level interactions. By paying attention to body language, noticing micro-expressions, listening with intention, and embracing the teachings of Buddhism, we can unlock the hidden truths that people often struggle to express with words. At its core, understanding others is not about rushing to conclusions or assuming the worst. It's about holding space for their emotions, their experiences, and their stories without judgment. When we approach others with this kind of openness, we invite them to share more authentically, which in turn helps us create relationships that are more connected and meaningful. This requires patience, practice, and the willingness to look beyond the surface to see what is truly at play beneath it. Buddhist philosophy teaches us that the most valuable skill we can cultivate in any interaction is compassion. This compassion isn't just reserved for times of crisis. It's something we can weave into every conversation, every exchange, and every encounter. When we let compassion guide our words and actions, we create a safe space where others feel seen, heard, and valued. This builds trust, which is the foundation of all strong relationships. As we continue to grow and navigate life, these skills of mindfulness, empathy, and understanding only become more essential. They help us connect with those around us in ways that enrich our lives and the lives of others. Especially as we age, these qualities allow us to navigate the complexities of human relationships with greater clarity and wisdom. They encourage us to embrace the beauty of every moment, to truly listen to what others are saying, and to respond with kindness and openness. So, the next time you find yourself in a conversation, take a moment to pause, Observe and listen. Notice the little things, the gestures, the pauses, the subtle cues that reveal the true emotions behind the words. When you do, you'll be amazed at the depth of understanding you can achieve and the quality of connection you can create. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope these insights inspire you to approach your interactions with more mindfulness and compassion. If you found this video helpful, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation and support each other on our journey toward deeper understanding and connection. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with anyone who might benefit from this message. Together, we can make the world a more compassionate and understanding place, one conversation at a time.